Today on Crit Games, how to make your own dungeon pillars. These things look great on the table. Start by cutting down a block of XPS foam. This is the type of foam you'd see in drywall. You can do this by hand. It's just a lot harder, a lot more tedious to make the cuts for it. But you start making these little 1-inch blocks, make a ton of them. For the bases, I did about 1.5 inches. That means you have about 1/4 inch on every side. I actually ended up making about 16 pillars. I took a look at the height of a miniature just to get a sense of how big to put this thing. Then you make cuts in about 2/3 on each side. I use the Proxxon cutter for this, just makes it nice and simple, nice and straight lines. Those are going to form your bricks, so when you stack these on top of each other and you alternate the sides, it looks like a mortar pattern that's stacked up on the sides going up. And then for the capstones, I already had a sheet that was already kind of hammered with a stone. But to texture the sides, the tried and true way of doing this with XPS foam is with foil, and just go through, give it some texture, and actually went back through by hand and even pulled it, made little divots a little harder. One thing I'm not showing here is I took a pen and ran along each of the edges of the rock. And then you just glue it together. This is a low wattage, low melt glue gun. And just make a whole number of these. You're going to want at least a dozen for your table. I'm using just a spray-on Rust-Oleum. This is the cheap stuff you get to do your black coverage. The one on the right, if you notice a little bit, I came in a little bit too closely with the spray. That's what happens if you come in too close. The propellant inside will melt it a bit. And then you take, this paint was actually 50 cents. It was cast off from the local Home Depot, but you can dry brush that on. Actually doing it a little bit heavier, just to give the stone a nice gray coat, leaving some of the black in the background. This gives you a nice stony texture. Nothing fancy here, I'm really just using 2 different colors. And then to seal it all up, you put Mod Podge over the top of it, and I'm using a sponge brush here. I watered it down a little bit, just to make sure it gets in every nook and cranny. I live in the Pacific Northwest. We actually have different types of moss that are available. You carefully, I went outside, found some. You carefully pull it apart, get the little sprigs together, and then just using some Elmer's glue all, just finding a few of the nooks and crannies in the stone, things that might look where the moss is clinging onto. And, I don't know where you're living, but we have moss like everywhere on rocks and trees and whatnot. So these things, they'll grow anywhere there's a little bit of moisture and a little bit of dirt. And then you just kind of manipulate it in with some tweezers. Nothing special here, just trying to get it to look a little nice. Each of the stone pillars just kind of vary it up a little bit. Some don't have it. Some just have one. Just do what's aesthetically pleasing. And there you go. There's a pillar. Once that PLA glue dries, you'll have a nice looking set of stone pillars for your next dungeon crawl. If you like what you see, visit us online, critgames.com. Follow us, Crit Games LLC, or on YouTube. Like or subscribe there, and let me know what you think in the comments.